For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening and welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And tonight on the program, wow, what timing!
Dan. Last week, after the terrible floods, and everybody's still kind of picking up the pieces, we had a plumbing and heating company on. Today, cyber attacks, ransomware. And we happen to have FixMeStick, who is there. They have a product that cleans viruses, that stays up to date.
Yeah.
Definitely, this was like weeks and months ago. You can't plan this stuff.
So Marty from FixMeStick will be along shortly. Kevin Ammerman, IT specialist as well, a little later on the program with some helpful advice for entrepreneurs about that bug and other related issues. And if you've seen some of those warnings today or even been infected, stay tuned for Kevin later in the show because it should be interesting. First, some entrepreneurial news and notes. And my question of the week is on expansion. How would an ambitious young entrepreneur go about entering a new market, one that's not as familiar with the products?
Go there. You got to go there. That is only one aspect. I mean, because you have to, when you've been living in your own town for a long time and you want to venture out, you can read stuff online. You can do as much research as possible. But if you're not on the ground there, it's going to be really hard to gauge. It's going to be really hard to ensure that reality matches what you're reading online. I would say that's first and foremost. The second, depending on the size of undertaking you want, depending if you want boots on the ground or if it's more of an online service that you just kind of want to venture out into other markets, look for maybe a partner. Not everybody wants to have partners. I get that. Sometimes partners are a little bit difficult, but if you can find that strategic partner to help you expand in that market because they're local. I preach this all the time when it's a much further market. If it's Europe or as we've spoken before, if it's Hong Kong or China, you need to find that local partner because Western to Eastern, there is a major gap. If you're going from, some say from Montreal to Toronto,
I was going
could
down
be
the
as
401.
big. Yeah, just down the 401.
That's how I'm going, Josh.
Rescue 401. But really apply it to anywhere you want to go because a lot of people forget just down the 401, they want to go from Canada to the US. I say there's a lot of similarities, but there's definitely a number of differences as well. And if you don't have those local boots on the ground or you don't go and check out things for yourself, you can absolutely miss some crucial matters that could make your business a success or a flop.
And how do you attract attention in a market that you're starting from scratch in?
How much budget do you have?
It's
is it guerrilla marketing? Dan, this is kind of right up your alley. How much do you use your online kind of the free media versus making sure that people walk through the door, people know you? Spending the spending blitz can absolutely attract a lot. You've seen it in so many online businesses. I'm sure you've seen it in a number of your clients. Where's your budget? I think that's almost the first or the determining factor on what path do you want to take? Because if you have no money, it's a very different aspect if you have $1 million you can spend on marketing.
I've also told clients with similar concerns to just go out into that market and give stuff away. Get involved in the community, do charity work. That's a great quick way to establish yourself.
Well, part of it is not just dollars; it's time. Do you have the time? Where are you sacrificing? Where's the bang for the buck? Is it better for you? Do you have the time to spend 3, 4, 5 hours a day on giving away or spreading that knowledge? Or are you better off spending $1,000 a day and saving your 3, 4, 5 hours for working on your business and finding that next best strategy move?
So often on the show, we've been talking about a lot of AI stories. This one from Financial Post: machine learning helps large companies hire better, potentially cutting turnover. And speaking of machine learning and AI, today just a massive investment announced by the Quebec government right here in Montreal, another $100 million going to the tech sector.
And Montreal is really rapidly, I've heard this from people outside saying, yeah, Montreal, you're really known for technology. You're really known for, which I think is great to hear when it's unsolicited. Something is working well. Maybe it's, the Ubisofts of the world. Maybe it's Mel Studio. Who knows what aspect of it? I mean, there's a lot of tech companies here. And there's no question that there is some investment. How you qualify for that, for getting that government investment, that's a whole other story. But certainly the ability for computers, and we've spoken about this before, Dan, artificial intelligence can absolutely cut down and make your lives and businesses' lives far more efficient. In this particular article, it was about hiring. It was about how can you automate the hiring policy. There are softwares out there or programs out there that can run through CVs. You list a certain amount of criteria in CVs, and instead of taking you a day to go through 100 CVs, they can do it in seconds. So the question is, you have to identify the first criteria, no question about it. But once you have that identified, and then you can narrow down so the people you do meet, because artificial intelligence, the computer programs won't replace that, and everybody recognizes that. It won't replace that gut feeling. It won't replace how do you feel out an attitude or make sure there's a character fit. That's always going to be huge in any hiring, and we've heard that from a multitude of entrepreneurs here. It's not about the knowledge, it's about the character fit and the attitude as well. The artificial intelligence computer programs can narrow down your search and try and find a better candidate. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe it's never going to replace the gut feel, the sitting face to face in front of the person and hearing and seeing their visual cues on how they react and how they are in front of you.
Not anytime soon, anyway. One area where robots could automate perhaps a lot quicker is farming and this new wave of automated orchards.
And I guess it's always been around for the easy pickings, so to speak. The grains, it's always been easier on the grains. But when you come to more delicate fruits, when you're picking grapes or something where the harvester really kind of looks and feels in this particular, my example, the grape, to see if it's ready or not. That's something that technology is really advancing on. I don't know if it's there yet, but there's certainly massive investments to automate or find the robots to do the harvesting of the more delicate items out there that are still today picked by hand by whatever laborers they want to use, illegal or not.
Chatbots, speaking of AI, they can help a business and do some customer service for you, but they're not quite advanced enough to replace all your customer service staff just yet.
We've spoken about chatbots before, and to the extent what businesses really work well with it. It's amazing, the technology and the programming out there and what chatbots. I'm sure that there are people that have been chatting with companies that think they're chatting with a real person.
I've done that.
When it's absolutely not a real
just
person.
Just the other night, actually, with the food app.
There you go.
Yeah.
So perfect example. You're talking with a computer. You are basically chatting, trying to get information. And the simpler the business, the more automated, what are the shipping terms and how do I get the product and what's delivery time and what are the return. These program responses are easy. It's when you're getting to the more touchy-feely, how many people have expressed, have liked the product, how many told you about the colors, and even that can be programmed. But there's certain aspects that are in certain businesses where you won't be able to have a chatbot, or where you're going to actually want to throw it to an individual and to create that personal relationship or that personal link. We always talk about how the customer needs a reason why to walk into a store or why to buy a product. Chatbots can take you so far, and maybe all the way in certain examples, certain products. But if you really want to engage that customer, how do you replace a person? I'm biased, I love the technology, but I'm a people person. I'm a face-to-face guy, even though this is radio, and it's just something that I don't know if it'll ever truly be replaced.
Now, this story from Financial Post about dating your digital assistant. I'm curious about this, Josh, because you're not supposed to date your actual assistant.
No. Don't sleep with the payroll, as they kind of say.
Is it anymore? I guess you can date your digital assistant.
You could date your digital assistant. It's kind of weird and a little creepy, but hey, whatever. There is actually a Japanese company. This is an article I read today, and there's a Japanese company that is, everybody's trying, with their Siri or your Apple Echo or whatever. You're getting your information, but it's not personal. And I think the strange part is people want to kind of have that emotional attachment or that emotional exchange with anybody that's trying to help them find something. So this Japanese company is now creating, or has created, I don't know if it's commercialized yet, a hologram. So it's you're not just talking to a box, you're actually talking to a hologram within a little box. And she had, in this case it was she had motions and she would answer, and they're programming for her to be a little playful and be a little bit outside the regular just giving information, because they feel that more and more people want to have an emotional exchange, not a physical emotional exchange. That's impossible, but some type of connection. Hey, how's it going? You want to? It's kind of interesting. I don't know if I would want to do that, but there are plenty of people out there that want to, that want to date Siri. How many times has somebody asked, Siri, do you have a boyfriend? I believe they've tracked it, and it's I don't know how many millions of times, and they program a response, but it's a very canned response. And where this Japanese company is going is maybe a little bit less canned, maybe a little bit more flirty, and maybe that will be a little better. Kind of creepy, but who knows?
Whatever gets you through the day, I guess. We'll chat with Marty from FixMeStick in a second and talk a lot about IT security on the program tonight with Kevin Ammerman and a little bit about that famous worm.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you for today's Entrepreneur. And this evening we welcome Marty Algire from FixMeStick on a very apropos evening as everyone is talking about computer viruses. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So we'll get into some of that news in a little bit, but first, tell us simply about FixMeStick. What is it you do for a living?
Sure. So the FixMeStick is a computer virus removal device, and so you take this USB stick, you plug it into your infected computer, and it cleans viruses off. So I think everyone's familiar with the antivirus software. Antivirus programs have been around for a long time. And so that, by comparison, is a protection product. So that's like keeping malicious software and bad things off the computer. Essentially, every computer in the world is running some kind of antivirus protection. But the nature of internet security is such that bad things still get through. And when they do, they can be sort of painful and frustrating to get off. And that's what the FixMeStick does. It's the get it off product.
It's like the day after pill.
It is a.
So tell me,
right.
Marty, where did this come about? Like how long ago? How old is FixMeStick? When did you guys start?
So my co-founder and myself started the company in 2011, and we launched the first version of the product in 2012.
Now, where did this come from? Were your background in security or in computer knowledge, background programming? Where did this develop from?
Yeah, my first job out of university was at a Montreal startup that was in computer security. And so I sort of cut my teeth in internet security at a company called Zero Knowledge Systems, started in 1998. And by the time Corey and I left in 2011, we had been developing and sort of working on computer security products for all those years.
Now I know you're coming out with a brand new product. There probably wasn't much competition at the time, not for this specific item, but there's no question that you had to get the word out. Like when you first started, you were developing the product, but you had to think about getting the word out. So what was kind of the first thought or first step?
Our first way of getting the word out was really we were hustling and grinding out one sale at a time on the internet. So we would try and get the product reviewed. We got an early review by PC Magazine, and so that generated a nice spike in sales. That spike went right back down, and we had to keep going and find. We started with trying to get reviews, and then used those positive reviews to get the ball rolling with the press, and really focused on sort of the free or earned media at that stage. It was all earned, hard earned.
as it always is, I'm sure. And then of course you had an appearance on Dragon's Den. So that's going to be super interesting to hear about. And when we come back from the break, a little bit more about marketing and Dragon's Den and Marty and FixMeStick.
Yeah, we'll hear a clip from that Dragon's Den episode, plus Kevin Ammerman on the way about IT security as well on today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
We're chatting with Marty Algire of FixMeStick and talking about IT security and other issues. Marty, you actually had an appearance on Dragon's Den, And we'll let you fill us in on that in a second. But first, here's a bit of a clip. And how long ago was this?
This was January 2014.
All right, here's FixMeStick on Dragon's Den.
On your own?
Yep.
Go. You got every dragon making an offer on a
Every dragon, that's
$500,000
pretty
deal.
good, and they're all equity offers except mine, which lets you keep your company.
Or you can have working partners who are going to actually
I'm
be in the
a
business
very good
and
working
help.
partner. It's just, I don't steal your equity, that's all.
All right, how did that end? And did you do a deal with the famous Mr. Wonderful?
We were very impressed by Mr. Wonderful when we were there, as we felt like he was sharp, a sharp business thinker, and he asked good questions, and he clearly understood what we're doing. So we liked him, right, from that perspective. And it ended by we selected Dave. We selected Dave Chilton and Arlene Dickinson from the for our deal, and then when our pitch ended, Bruce Croxton came around and asked to be included in the next phase, and we were we thought that was a good idea, and so we worked with all three of them.
Did the deal happen in the end?
The deal did not happen in the end, and so the way that it works is we. Behind stage, there's like a picnic table, and we signed a term sheet, which is at that point they'd never heard nor seen a FixMeStick until 2 minutes prior, and so we signed a term sheet. Most of the terms were non-binding, and then when the schedule then is they finish taping shows for another few months, and then due diligence starts. And by the time we got through or deep into due diligence, our business had changed quite a bit.
So was it worth it to you in the end? I mean, the time that you put in,
It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. I would strongly encourage anyone with a startup or with a business, whether it's a consumer or a business-to-business, doesn't matter. Getting on national TV for free is an awesome deal. Like.
No, there's no question. And there's certainly a lot of different aspects, a lot of different marketing channels and media forms. We've spoken about many on the show before. And one that was kind of interesting when we spoke off air is that you really prefer the traditional media to the online media, even though you sell online. So when we come back from the break, we'll chat a little bit more about your marketing efforts, what kind of works for you and what necessarily perhaps didn't work for you. And we'll continue with that.
We're chatting with Marty Algire of FixMeStick, and later on the program, Kevin Ammerman, IT specialist, will stop by to talk about that infamous bug that's going around.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller, and our guest this evening is Marty Algire of FixMeStick. And coming up on the program, we'll talk more about IT and security issues with Kevin Ammerman, about the famous bug that's going around. But for now, Marty, let's talk about marketing and how you get the word out for FixMeStick. You're a big fan of traditional media, which I think is interesting. And, for a product that is geared towards computers, tell me why you gravitate towards traditional media like TV.
When we started to advertise the product, we my co-founder Corey Vellon and I both we're internet-y by background, so we're sort of computer engineers by trade. We like to do everything on the computer, and we assumed that we'd go along with digital advertising, and which we knew a little bit about, and we knew nothing about traditional media. I mean, you cannot know less than what we knew about traditional media. And then internet advertising completely failed to generate any prospects or sales for our business. We lost all our money. It was a disaster.
Not even on the branding side, the visibility to get people to recognize that it exists.
No, we could spend, I mean, for our budgets, unlimited amounts, and it would not increase sales. For example, in retail or anywhere else. It's first failed in digital advertising, and that sort of pushed us towards traditional media, where we kind of fell over into some early successes, and we didn't really know why, but we knew enough to go back there.
What were those successes? What did work for you then?
It started with a radio show on a AM a talk radio program out of Calgary. I was invited to do an interview. It's like early morning drive time, and I did this interview with the host, and it went really well. And Corey was at we didn't have a phone at the office at the time, so I was at home to do the interview, and Corey was in the office, and we saw the traffic on our website jump, and we realized that we wanted to make that happen again, as often as possible.
Sure.
And so at first our feeling was, well, we can just get interviewed all the time, like twice a day. We'll just get interviewed. It's going to be great. And then
easier said than done.
Tell me about it.
You can come on next week and the week after. We'll have fun.
Yeah, and then we learned that actually we can't be interviewed all the time. We're not newsworthy all the time, and so that led us to traditional advertising, which has been great for our business.
So now you've been on radio. What about, and you've been on Dragon's Den. What about other types of media on TV or whatever? A home shopping network, I think we were kind of talking about off air. Talk a little bit about that and how that's helped you.
Sure. So we started with radio as a means to test traditional media with modest budgets, and that went very well. It got our confidence into a bigger production budget, and to invest in the creation of a TV spot. And we've been running our TV spot in the United States and Canada, different times of the year for almost 2 years. And so traditional media remains the workhorse of building awareness and leads for the FixMeStick.
Do you outsource that? Do you hire outside people? Do you have your own marketing team from within, or did you hire outside to create the ad and find the space? And
our first ad, we used an agency in Seattle that specialized in, well, there are lots of direct response specialty agencies. This is one that we were referred to and we trusted it. And our second ad, we made it ourselves. So I was the producer. Corey's been the pitch man in both ads. And so he's an outstanding, he's an outstanding talent in that way. He has other talents, but I don't think anyone saw this one coming because he's highly analytical and intelligent. But also,
was it a good experience using an outside party, like compared to when you produced it yourself? Why did you bring it back in house?
I'll never do it again. So I think I would much rather. We won't produce another spot ourselves again. So we think it turned out okay. There are things that we don't like about it, and I'm at the stage where we were so budget focused, and we saw an opportunity to save some money, and we thought do it well by ourselves, and in the end, I don't think we did, and I don't want to work so hard to do mediocre things.
Right. Yeah. Now, we'll move on from marketing in a sec, but I just have one question, because Home Shopping Network, we haven't really delved into that with many other entrepreneurs on the show. How does it work? Do you have to get the right product, have the right spot? Do you have to pay them a percentage? Just in a quick nutshell, how does it work?
Sure. So the home shopping channel in Canada is called the Shopping Channel. In the U.S., there are multiple. The biggest are QVC and the Home Shopping Network. We sell on both. In both countries, it's a huge account for us. So it's fundamental to our business are these home shopping networks, and they work like a traditional retailer with no stores. And so it's a percentage of the MSRP or a percentage of the consumer price, and instead of putting it on the shelf and driving weekly flyers and rebates, they do a show. They got a host and an expert. And they present the product, and we think that's why we've done so well on home shopping, is because ours is a new brand, and it's a new type of product. It's not like a new brand of toothbrush where everyone knows what a toothbrush is. It's a new brand of a virus removal device, and that needs to be explained.
So does that mean there's no competition?
It means there are no other virus removal devices on the shelf or on the Home Shopping Network for that matter. But there are other ways to remove a virus from your computer. So we compete with sort of those other solutions.
Is it important to have that physical product, especially for older consumers who are used to buying something and actually feeling it?
I think we found that people really like having a tangible, wrap your hand around something and plug it in type of a product. The nature of our solution is that it does have to be an external device. And so it's the software, the viruses that we're removing will sabotage antivirus programs and prevent them from being able to do their thing. And so if you get infected like that, you need an external device to get it off. And so that's what the FixMeStick is.
Now, you mentioned your partner, Corey Vellon, who's not here with us this evening, but there's a partnership. Do you guys get along? Do you step on each other's toes? Do you share the roles? Do you have distinct roles? How do you guys work together?
We get along very well. We've been working together for 14 years. Sometimes in a room, like a 12 by 12 room, chairs backing up against each other while we wrote software and worked on our entrepreneurial sort of ventures. At the current, with FixMeStick in its current size, we had no choice but to divide and conquer, and so we do. We rarely work on the same thing together, simply because we can't grow that way. We've got to break it down and each be responsible for our own things.
That mean you meet formally now versus just backing chairs into each other before?
we still have few. We have few we have few weekly meetings, but we meet all the time. I mean, we're separated by a 8-inch wall, and I still see Corey more than my family.
Which means you love him very much. How do you resolve your differences?
We tell each other that we're not emotional or sensitive, and we just hammer things out, and we try and be aware of our own bias. And I tend to have more of those than he does, and we hammer things out.
Makes a good partnership, I'm sure. I know that there's so much more to talk about, Marty, from manufacturing, where you get your product, and distribution and human resources and all that. We're just running out of time with such great information, so you'll have to come back another time. But in the meanwhile, thanks very much for that part of the story.
Then we'll have Marty's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur at the end of the show. And next, Kevin Ammerman, IT specialist, joins us to talk about that big bug that's going around and how it can how we can help save your business, at least at the IT part.
Landau, chartered professional accountants and business advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL's Josh Miller with you for today's entrepreneur. We're chatting with Marty Algire of FixMeStick. His one piece of advice for today's entrepreneurs on the way. But first, we'll bring in Kevin Ammerman, IT specialist at FL, to talk about IT security and some of the big news that came out today. Welcome back, Kevin.
Hello.
So first, obviously, the big story is the WCry or WannaCry worm. First, let's get the most important information out there for businesses.
How it initially gets into your network. We're guessing it's either by an email that you click on a link or through a web page or pop-up or something like that. But the problem is once it's in your network, it spreads on its own. That's the way worms operate, is once they have a foothold in your network, they just take over on their own and spread throughout the network. And you've got it when that infamous screen pops up saying, please pay me $300 to decrypt your files.
And that's, we hear a lot about ransomware. We hear a lot about the encryption and to pay for it. But do people have no choice? Is there what can they do to not necessarily prevent it, but is there anything they can do to help minimize the damage?
Certainly, yeah. So one good way to prevent damage is to make sure you have good backups, so you can just snap your system back to a previous point in time rather than pay that ransom. It was kind of surprising. They had some figures on how much money had been paid to the ransom people, and it was something on the order of $20,000 or $30,000 or something like this. And based on the numbers of flying around of over 200,000 infections, that's not a very good return for these guys. So it sounds like a lot of people apparently have been smart, have backed up their files, or maybe they've just given up and walked away. That's the other alternative.
It's also a question about testing your backups, because sometimes you can back everything up, but you're not sure if it really works.
To make sure you test your backups and you have layers of backup. So a local backup, maybe a cloud-based backup, and to make sure you test both and make sure that you're covered from end to end. So not just your operating system files, but most importantly, your personal data and your business data.
If you have automatic updates set on your PC or on your Mac, are you safe at this point?
This one didn't affect Macs at all. And yes, if your automatic updates were running on Windows, you would be covered. Also, Windows 10 was unaffected by this altogether. But a lot of people do disable their automatic updates. They find it intrusive, which is a big mistake. It can really open up your computer to a lot of troubles.
Now, there's a lot of these worms out there that could also take a lot of time to work through your system. Somebody could put a hack in, and I'm really speaking. This is not my domain. Can somebody have a worm or a virus sent in that only takes effect a year from now?
That's sort of our big worry right now, is that there's some sort of time bomb thing going on, that maybe an encryption that's going on in the background that we can't see, and it gradually takes over your computer, and then one day you find it's all locked up. That's the kind of thing we're a little bit worried about. If hackers find a way to come up with that kind of time delay, we could be in some serious trouble.
I've actually noticed an entrepreneur-specific pitch, and I think it's a virus that I've received from some emails, and they'll start, the stranger will start the email with something like, I'd like to be a new client. Here, can you click here to check out my proposal? And it's, for an entrepreneur, it's very tempting to click on that button.
Honestly, it's sort of sad to say, but the technology behind the viruses has been a little bit lacking in the last, 15 years. There are some new surprises that come out every once in a while, but it's really social engineering that's the big driver behind how all these things spread these days. And that's not going away. Ever since the infamous Anna Kournikova virus years and years ago, people have been finding different ways to lure you into clicking on different links.
So
comes back to our AI discussion at the beginning, saying they want an emotional connection with a computer. They're going to click on things.
So bottom line, if you're not expecting an attachment, should you not open it or even ask your contact if this is a real email from you?
If you're not expecting something to come in from anyone, or if it looks in the least suspicious, if you move your mouse over the links in the attachment in the document and they come up with anything out of the ordinary, or if there's a PDF attached and you really were not expecting that, just delete it, call the sender, and see if they were really trying to send it to you.
More with Kevin in just a second. Plus, we'll have Marty's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
We'll have Marty Algire's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur in a second, but first, IT security with Kevin Ammerman. And Kevin, what's the best way people can protect their businesses against these kinds of viruses? Does everyone need a Norton or a similar type of product?
You definitely need some kind of antivirus. So there's lots of different opinions about what's the best one out there. Windows, and I think it started in Windows 7, they started distributing a product with the operating system that's pretty good, but most people want some sort of extra level on top of that running on their personal computer, and you definitely want something filtering your email before it gets to you. But the best way to protect yourself is a little bit of education, to take a very close look at the email and the links before you click on those links, and to not be scared to ask. If ever in doubt, definitely call somebody who, or forward the email to somebody who's in the know about these things, and get them to take a look.
Even if it looks real and somebody's asking you to do something, a colleague, a boss, it's not necessarily always correct. Thanks, Kevin, very much. And as we approach our last moment of the show, we'll turn to Marty Algire, FixMeStick, and ask you, Marty, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
This would be my advice for the older entrepreneurs. So I started FixMeStick when I was 36. I already had two kids and a marriage, so I had I had responsibilities, and I think it's important to take a few moments early on, or before you quit your job and start something, to take a few moments to be crystal clear about what mistakes you can afford to make, which ones you can't afford to make, and to share those with the people who depend on you. Yeah.
Don't necessarily jump right in with your gut. Is that what you're saying?
Don't blow your savings.
Don't blow your savings. Not always the same advice that we hear from other entrepreneurs, but very interesting. Dan, my quick takeaway is, and I've kind of said this before, it's kind of know what you don't know and don't be afraid to try something new. They thought FixMeStick was digital marketing, digital advertising. They realized, as much as their product attached to computers wasn't good, they realized that it was a traditional marketing that really worked for them.
Thanks very much, Josh, and thanks to Marty of FixMeStick. Best of luck, Marty.
Thank you very much, guys.
And Kevin Ammerman, will chat with you soon on Today's Entrepreneur as well. Listen to past episodes of Today's Entrepreneur at the community section at flmontreal.com. We are off next week, I believe.
Correct.
For Victoria Day.
Back May 29th.
Sounds good. We'll see you then, Josh.